Hello, everybody. Great to see you guys again. Kyle Allen with Vaco, and I have a special guest today, Kim Wainwright, um,
Thank you.
who has been around here a long time, and an exciting topic, and one that I would probably say we get asked the most. What are they worth? How do I get more money? What are my peers making? All kinds of stuff. And so today, Kim's here to kind of walk us through salary negotiation, whether you're in a current job trying to negotiate that salary with your current employer, or you're looking for a new gig and needing to figure out how to get the most money from the new employer. So we're excited. So Kim,
Yep.
tell us quickly about you a little bit. How long you've been here, and what do you do? And
So I have been at Vaco for 15 years. It'll be 15 years in May. I have been in the market in Nashville in accounting and finance in recruiting for about 25 years, and oversee the accounting and IT direct hire teams at Vaco. But still actively work on a desk and work with clients and candidates.
yep, you got a great intel. We've seen, I would say, a huge bump in comp, obviously the past 18 months, COVID, and a
Yeah.
lot of big jumps and negotiating and back and forth. And we get calls all the time from individuals looking for market intel, whether our clients like it or not. They call us too, because
That's
we're
right.
market experts, right? And so that's what we do. And we shoot them straight on kind of what the market is, whether they're looking to hire people or they're looking for a job themselves. So Kim, I'm calling you. I don't know what my worth is. I've been at my job 4 or 5 years, putting my toe in. Should I call you just when I'm looking for a job and ready to go? How should I start? And then how do I find out what's the best way to go about kind of me knowing what I'm worth?
Yeah, absolutely. And there were a lot of things that you just mentioned in that, Kyle. And one, it's if do you love your current job and you want to stay there, but you want to have some conversations about what you can do to maximize your financial income? There's that. But if you are ready to maybe dip your toe in and see what's out there, you can, there's that too. So I think a lot of that starts with self-reflection. What do you want to do? Do you want to stay in your current job? Do you love your organization? Do you love the team you're on? And you just want to maximize your financial worth? And I think that's what we're going to spend some time talking about today. But it's always okay to reach out to a recruiter. I think the first step is doing that research, right? Like, let's really figure out what your value is in the market as a whole, not just in your organization. I think that's where talking with a recruiter can kind of help you facilitate what is going on in the market. Because to your point, it has drastically changed in the last 18 months.
So much.
Everything from wanting more compensation to wanting a hybrid work environment to wanting more flexibility in general. And I think that's where we can really help facilitate a conversation, help you figure out what's going in the market as a whole, and then kind of dig a little bit deeper and figure out how you have those conversations with your current manager if you want to stay and maximize your financial income.
So talking to the recruiter, I'm 5 years in. I'm 5 years at public accounting or 5 years accounting experience. I'm like, hey, what's my worth? How do you guys kind of go about giving that information to the individuals? What kind of questions would you ask? How can they be prepared to kind of find out what that is?
Yeah. So I think once we go through that conversation and figure out really what it is, and you decide that you want to stay in your current position, I think, one, setting the meeting is step one, right? That's the toughest part. But I think once you've made the decision to do it, it's a lot easier to move forward. And with that, prior to setting that meeting, one, like we've just talked about, do your research, find out what's going on in the market, but then dig a little bit deeper and reflect back on your last 12 months or your last 2 years. What salary increases have you received? Are they really good increases? Are they so-so? Are they in line with what's been trending? But then really reflect back on what you've been doing. What have you done in addition to just your day-to-day job? What accomplishments have you done? What projects have you worked on? What value have you brought to the organization? What have you done for the team? It's really making a mini resume of what have you done above and beyond what is required of you in your day-to-day job, right?
Yeah, I think it's understanding the value you bring why do they pay you the way they pay you? One, but two is understanding kind of where is your value? Like, are you making the company money? Are you saving the money? What achievements have you done? And so I think so many people, you probably say to this, like, well, I need more money because I've got more responsibilities. I got more bills. I got kids. I've got cars. I got whatever. And like, to be fair, like that's on you. That's decisions you've made. Right.
That's
and
right.
That's not always, that's not what you want to lead with. You never really want to talk about that. Right.
That's right.
And so I think it's important for these individuals to understand, like they're paying you for a reason.
That's right.
And it's always one of those two. And I think it's understanding, and I don't want to get into this whole, but it's really being self-aware of how you show up, right? Yeah. And are you adding to the culture? Are you adding to the mission, to the drive, are you being, a thought leader? Are you a go-to kind of individual, and kind of what attitude do you bring every day? This is like, are you bringing energy to the organization, or are you sucking it out? Right. And so I think that is really, really something to understand. Like, as you're going through this, like, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing?
Yeah. And I think, as you're, kind of going through and building your case, so to speak, it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be all these huge things. It can even be emails that you've received from colleagues and coworkers and managers about, you did a great job today. Thank you. You really saved me. I appreciate you helping me out last Friday when I was trying to hit that deadline. It can be little things too, but it is, going back and looking and figuring out what value, what extras have you done other than just what is on your job description.
And I think this is also a good point, as I'm obviously in a leadership role and have really good people working with me and for me.
Yeah.
That it's not that the leaders don't, sometimes they take you for granted, right? And they don't fully see everything. They're just like, oh, call Barbara. She's going to knock it out. James, he's got this, right? You're so dependable. Yeah. It's like sometimes putting that in front of your leader or your boss to show them, you're like, wow, you've done holy cow, this is a lot. Yeah. I knew, but I didn't fully know. And so I think that helps too, of like, and putting that in front of them to see and show. And I think, again, you're like, where your boss is like, what do you want? I got to have you. And you're like, that's a great position to be in, right? Instead of being like, all right, well, they're wanting some raise, I got to make them happy. That's not the position you want to be in, right?
Yeah. And I think it's okay too to take to those conversations, without saying I've been interviewing or I've been talking with recruiters, to say I've done the research in the market and here's the range of what I'm seeing someone with my experience is dictating in the market. And I just want to have a conversation with you about, your thoughts on where I lie in this range, and my thoughts on where I feel like I lie and where I would like to be and what I need to do to get there. Be a little vulnerable, offer yourself up a little bit too.
Yeah.
But this is what I feel like I'm worth. This is what the market is showing. And I'd like to have a conversation with you about what your thoughts are on that as well. They may not know.
No doubt. Kim, talk a little bit. This is one thing that kind of gets skewed a little bit in our world. Talk about titles a little bit, of how, well, I've got this title. It turns into an ego play for somebody. And they're like, well, I've got to have this title with this amount of money. And you're like, well, talk about how our titles all created equal. And does that mean the same salary bandwidth for each title?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, that comes up a lot. I'll have a lot of times we'll have, candidates reach out to us, or even clients looking to hire, like, I want to hire a senior accountant or a staff accountant. It's like, what does that really mean? Right. Let's talk about what that means. And what I would say to your point about a title within a certain organization, a controller of a 5-person team is very different from a 100-person team, is very different from a 5-person team. So I think it's really, titles are important, and it makes us feel good, but it really is digging in, like, here's a controller definition, a true controller definition, and what am I doing? And even if the duties are the same from company A to company B to company C, depending on the size and the sophistication of the accounting you're doing and what the organization does as a whole, that definitely can change that number a little bit too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also important to understand. I think some people you can get over titled early in your career, right? To where it's a small startup company and they're just handing titles away of VPs and they're 25 years old, and you're like, well, I'm looking for another VP title at a $1 billion company, and it's just like, it's
Mhm.
not apples to apples, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes you can get too heavy a title early on and hurt you and inflate you, and then egos come into play and whatnot. So
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
I feel like one piece that people always miss about salary negotiation is the grass is always greener, right?
Yeah.
And not fully evaluating where they currently are from a benefit standpoint, from a flexibility, just knowing what they have and always just taking that for granted and just assuming the new organization is better, right?
Right.
Talk about that a little bit. Is how do individuals weigh the benefit piece? What are some things they're missing and thinking through that to keep them from making a right evaluation, kind of where they are from a total comp standpoint? Because
Yeah.
I put that in the salary piece, but more of a total comp standpoint.
It really is. And, I think anytime when we're working with someone and we're talking about a new opportunity and what that package is going to look like, I always tell folks, write down your total take home. And because benefit plans vary drastically, benefit offerings. And again, I think that's what's most important to you, right? Is a really if you're married, you have 2 or 3 children, a family insurance plan is very, very important.
Yep.
And you might look at another opportunity with just smaller company and a great title and great compensation, but the benefit package is a little lax just because of where that organization is in their tenure. That's something you certainly need to take into consideration, right? And I think again, in negotiating your salary with your current employer, that's something as you're doing your research to take into consideration. If you have a really good benefit package, keep that in mind. If it's not really great, keep that in mind. But when you're coming up with that range that you want to go to your supervisor with and talk about your worth in the market, know all of those factors.
Yeah.
401k match investing, not everyone has that. So that's a big advantage if you have it. It's a big advantage if you want to go find it because you don't. So again, I think that goes back into doing the research in the marketplace to what's being offered,
For sure.
what's out there.
So Kim, walk me through this. I'm working with you. I've got a new job. I am leaving. We'll hit
Mhm.
the hey, I'm staying question next. I'm leaving. I've got a new job. I'm working with you. I don't want to talk about kind of the process. We've hit on plenty of that. But we're
Yeah.
getting down to negotiating salary. I've got the company I think I like, but I've got another one. Maybe I'm going back and forth. What are some things that, from your standpoint, how are you going to help me
Yeah.
negotiate that salary?
Okay. So when you're starting to go through the interview process, and right now, if you did decide you wanted to tip your toe, you're going to have quite a few opportunities to look at pretty quickly because the market is really great right now for if you're a candidate looking. What I would recommend everyone do as they're going through different interview processes prior to even negotiating compensation is to start making a list of the pros and cons of each organization, each position that you're looking at. The things you like about this, not the money, just the job, just the people,
Yeah.
just so when you are ready to get offers, you're not doing a knee jerk based on top salary, right? Make sure it's the job you really want. It's the company you really want. And if and so you pick the one, you get the offers. If if you get multiple offers, can you play those against one another a little bit? Perhaps, it's certainly something to think about. And you should, especially if you're working with a recruiter, they can be your advocate and help you do that. Um, but keeping in mind which position do you really want, knowing when to push and when to stop, and looking at all the other benefits and advantages that come to one over the other. If it is all about the money and all about the benefits, that's an easy answer, right?
Right.
But I do think when you start to go into a situation where you're trying to counter an offer that you received, again, having done your research and knowing what that position is worth in the market is great to have. Knowing how your experience aligns with it is great to have. And then knowing the range on where you could be and figuring out the number that's going to make you comfortable. Is it the top end only? It can't hurt to say it. If it's somewhere in the middle, that's probably where you're going to land.
Yeah.
So I do think it's kind of knowing your number going into those conversations and and knowing where you're willing to settle and not reaching too high and just eliminating it.
For sure.
But not undercutting yourself and going low. And again, I think that's just a conversation as well. But if you are working with a recruiter, that is a huge help in facilitating that conversation and being that advocate for you.
Kim, real quick. So what if they're not using a recruiter? And they're on their own, which we would never vouch for anybody should do that. They should always call us. I understand that. But let's say they don't. Let's say they're working through HR or they're working through a friend of a friend and got them in the door, which definitely happens. What's the best way if they're like, they receive an offer and they're like, ugh, not exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Give me a couple points that you would talk to that individual about how to kind of go about a conversation with somebody that's not represented by a recruiter.
I think first and foremost going into that is the very first thing is reiterating your interest and all the reasons why you're excited about the opportunity and the organization and the people, why you want to be a part of it. I've seen it so many times. Candidates will interview and one candidate is more qualified than another candidate, but the candidate who is expressing the most interest, that's 9 times out of 10 who gets the position. So I do think you started off with, I really want to be here. And these are all the reasons I'd like to join the organization. That's out of the equation. You've now said that and say, I'm pleased that you made an offer. I'm honored, but I wanted to have a conversation with you about how you landed on that number, because I'm really thinking this number would be more appealing to me.
Based on research I've done or people you've talked to or say, yeah, no,
that's right. That's right. So kind of help me understand how you landed, and are you open to a dialogue about how that can maybe change a little bit that's mutually of interest to both of us?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you hit on a good tip, and this is more interviewing wise, but so many people don't say at the end of the interview, I'm interested, right? And I always say to say you're interested even when you're not sure, because it gives you options.
That's right.
Options, right?
That's right.
So you may not know all the ins and outs of the job to kind of form a full opinion, but that's a great point and so true. Like showing energy, interest level. Everybody wants to be wanted, right? And so that's key.
And I think they want to know that you want to be there for reasons other than compensation.
Right. Totally.
And that makes the comp a lot easier to go.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, Kim, I'm calling you today after a 15-minute conversation about you asking me questions about assessing my career. I think I've decided I like where I'm at. Maybe it comes down to I've learned that I'm probably underpaid in some form or fashion.
Right.
2 questions. 1, when do I have that conversation with my boss? Do I wait till he asks me to have a review? Do I when's the appropriate time? And 2, how do I do it?
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. And I think, naturally people think review time is the time to have that conversation because you're reviewing how you did last year, what your new responsibilities are going to be, maybe compensation, all that comes along with that. What I would say to that is at that time, probably your raise has already been set. There's been a budget, there's been a process. Here is your new raise for the upcoming year. So what I would recommend that you do is start reaching out to have that conversation 3-4 months prior to the review. It maybe can't happen until your review, right? It could be company policy raises cannot take place until these dates. So I would encourage you to have that conversation 3-4 months prior to, and just set the table for when they're going to get your raise approved, all this research that you've done in this resume page that you've put together, all the accomplishments you've done over the last year, 2 years, they have that. So when they go to approve your raise or request your raise, you've already had the conversation, and they will be your advocate to probably get it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I would not wait. Yeah. Well, you asked me a 2-part question.
Yeah. No, well, I think when to do it and then what to say. And I think you've hit on that too a little bit. And I think this is another piece too, is always, I think people get in their head a lot with having these conversations when the simplicity of it is you feel like you're undervalued, right? Whether that's position or money, and just say it. There's a professional way to say it, but also too, if you feel like, hey, I'm potentially, if you're self-aware and getting a sense of hey, I feel like leadership is potentially where I want to go.
Yeah.
Say that.
Yeah.
Or what are the opportunities, or how can I grow in my career? Ask the question, pose the question. You don't have to come to the meeting with all the answers.
That's right.
And so I think that's an important piece too, of like trajectory of like, and they may ask, well, what do you want to do? Be ready for that question. Right.
Yeah.
Or have a general idea of what that is, or where your value is. But I think that's important to see too, is like, hey, it's not only a salary negotiation, but it's like a trajectory discussion.
Yeah.
You can kind of have, just kind of see where you're at. And then, hey, where I'm falling short. And then two, I think in that meeting, this is really, really important for people to grow. You've got to know how you show up.
Right.
Ask.
Right.
And that's hard to do for some people because they really don't want to know the truth. And they're like, I'm fine. Do you know how you show up to your boss? Ask him.
Yeah.
The more you're asking, the more you're going to get honest feedback. But I think all that plays into a part of where trajectory of growth, career, salary, comp, all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had a great point. I think it's, going into these conversations is to, even though you've done your research and you think this, is be prepared for this.
Yeah.
Be prepared to answer tough questions or any kind of pushback. You can probably reflect in the past year and know like, that was probably not a great thing that happened. I need to be prepared to talk about that. We all do.
Or get in front of it and bring it up and say, hey, I feel like this is something that might hurt me this year. Working on that. What kind of, and asking too, like what kind of self-development work can I do? What kind of, leadership development work can I do inside the organization? That's an organization for me. If I'm looking and saying, hey, this organization is doing training, personal development, pouring into me as a professional to grow, like that's a check in the box. Because not every organization, I've talked about this in previous LinkedIn lives, but people today they're always looking to find out people outside to come in to do the organization, but they're not taking care of their own people inside. So if you're with an organization that's pouring into you and your career, like, man, that's a couple checks in the boxes for sure.
Yeah.
For that.
And make sure you're taking advantage of those offerings. If you're not, need to check some of those boxes. And I think that goes back to how you show up. Are you just showing up and doing these 10 things? Or are you doing these 10 things and all the extra stuff?
That's right.
And if you're not doing it's okay just to do the 10 things. I mean, there's a time in everyone's life that I can only manage these 10 things. But that'll change too. Life changes and circumstances changes. And then you start looking for some of the extras. And, this is going to maybe sound a little either elementary, potentially corny. But the other thing I would strongly encourage someone to do is practice this conversation. Practice this, whether it's, your spouse, a good friend, a parent, practice it.
Yeah. And give your person you're practicing with, give them some hard questions to ask you.
Yeah.
Right. That make you come up with scenarios. And you're like, that sounded bad. We'll start it over, practice, run it back through. What didn't work, what did work.
Yeah.
And ask for feedback after the fact of, hey, what can I do better? What'd you like about what I did?
Yeah.
I think running through that, and you can also do it in the mirror one-on-one if you've done this a lot kind of thing and you're more experienced. But I think it's always good to have some kind of run through and then have some talking points. It's super easy to bring a computer into a meeting now. Just have your laptop up or have a couple of handwritten notes of 4 or 5 bullet points. Like I'd have no problem with people bringing notes into a meeting to hit some. I want to make sure I talk about everything we have. Come prepared.
You
don't try to do this negotiation. Don't look at it as a negotiation. It's just a conversation, right? And so I think a negotiation kind of is like, it's like we're turning into lawyers.
Yeah.
But totally, the preparation is for sure key. So
yeah, no, definitely. What else?
No, I think that's great. I mean, I think it's talking about how we're summarizing. Getting the market research, calling us, or you can do that online, right? It doesn't have to be just us, but we'd love to talk to you. What that looks like. Understanding current. Are you in a current spot that you really need to stay and just have this kind of harder conversations, but also evaluating kind of where are the benefits, where are they developing you, where are they pouring back into you from a professional development standpoint, and then just doing the gig, either making the jump or not, and having the conversation. So I think simplifying it is great, but being prepared is great. So Kim, this was awesome.
Good. Thanks. No, it was so fun.
Well, Kim, if we have any questions, where do we find you?
My email is on the screen, kwainwright@vaco.com. Feel free to reach out anytime, regardless of the question. I'm happy to try to facilitate an answer for you. And if I don't know the answer, I will find someone who does.
If you want to know your market worth, Kim Wainwright is your gal.
Call us. Call.
She'll help you out. So awesome. Thanks so much, Kim.
No,
See
thanks,
you
Kyle.
in a few weeks.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.